Hey, happy Sunday. And this is PFG Live, the podcast that will help you with your energy at no charge. Welcome aboard. We have a bunch of folks in the Discord server and on the YouTube. Let's see, we got Tucker reporting in from Buffalo, New York at 45 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy with all the snow melting. DBX near White Plains, New York is reporting winds 270 at 12, gusting 22. Visibility 10 miles and clear. Temperature 11, dew point -3. Altimeter 2974. Evils is reporting from Ghent, Belgium. 21.8 degrees C and 7.7 degrees C dew point from somewhere inside the inner sanctum. Josh checks the audio and says, check, check. Bill Olney in Rome, New York, home of Air Force Research Labs, reports 40 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. Michael Juan says it's 12 degrees science and sunny in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Welcome aboard, sir, with a cool picture, I might add. Josh in southern Manitoba reporting with winds are 130 at 6 knots, temperature -0. -0? Somebody's got to fix that computer. Dew point -0. And soggy. Rommel says in Geneva, Switzerland, 4 degrees and cloudy. Welcome, Geneva, Switzerland. Warren Jones in Sutton, New Hampshire, my neighbor to the north, reports it's cloudy in the mid-40s, and the snow is also melting, but not fast enough. We will help. Dale in Snow, Mexico, reports -1 degree science and overcast. And welcome aboard, Dale. Over on the YouTube side, CJ Stevens is reporting 56 degrees Fahrenheit and clear in East Tennessee. Welcome, sir. He says it's a little windy, but overall nice. Test Room 2003, he says, good evening. 6 degrees science, 88% relative humidity from Oostkapelle, Netherlands. Welcome aboard, sir. Wow, a good crowd today. It's gray here. It's just gray. And currently at the Manchester, New Hampshire airport, winds are 220 at 6 knots, visibility 10 miles, overcast at 3,900, temperature 06, dew point -03, altimeter 2963. And the remarks are unimportant. I hope everybody's having an awesome weekend. We got a lot done this weekend. Things are actually happening as we speak. We have PFG Stones down in the shop being made. So this podcast is brought to you by PFG Stones. Others have stones, but ours are PFG. We finished up a bunch of 6-inch stones. They're back in stock. 4-inch, we're cleaned out of 4-inch stones. Those are in the pipeline right now. We have several orders going out. Should be out by Thursday. That's I'm building a little fat into that prediction, and certainly available for your ordering pleasure. Let's see. We have a couple of things to follow up on. We had some new sticker companies that we're trying, so we placed. We had to order some stickers. And we decided to go with 3 brand new companies and give each of them an order. Those 3 companies are Sticker Giant, Sticker Wolf, and Standout Stickers. So between the 3 of those, the first 2 are getting sticker orders. The last one has already delivered to us a magnet order. And I'm going to hold off on reviewing these guys until they're all in and we've been able to check them out. But we're spreading the love and see which of the sticker companies do what, and what are their strengths and what are their weaknesses, and we will report. Hashtag not sponsored. Meanwhile, we also are accumulating your ideas for the problem process, which is going to be when we invite Tom Lipton and Robin Renzetti in real time, address the problem that you present, and we get to watch them noodle it out and solve the problem. And that's still in the pipeline. If you're interested in presenting your problem as for potentially being chosen, go to pfg.gg/links, and you'll see a big banner for the problem process, and you'll be able to submit your idea, and we'll get on with that. So we're waiting until we have sort of a critical mass, and then I'm going to call the principals and figure out a date, and we'll announce it, and then we'll do it live, because that's what we do here. So also from last week, or 2 weeks ago, because we had Thanksgiving in there, I talked about the fact that we fired ShipStation because of their behavior. And I picked up a company called Shippo. So these are companies that provide the shipping logistics. You can buy postage through them, print labels through them. They track orders. They interface with the website so that the orders come over, and it kind of makes things work really easily for shipping. And we picked up Shippo, and I am really digging it. So, I contacted Shippo on customer service via chat, and I gave them some questions, and they answered them rapidly. And one of the questions I gave them when they were all done answering my real questions, I said, "Where are you sitting?" And they said, San Francisco. And I said, "That's excellent." And they said, "Was that the right answer?" I said, "Yes, that was the right answer." And I could tell that they were typing in American. They were sitting in San Francisco, and they were giving me good information, and they knew what they were talking about. And that was huge. And also, each one of those things was not true with the former service provider, which we had to separate from. So the performance, printing labels, getting what we need, getting what we want, interfacing with our systems has been absolutely painless with Shippo. I will admit that for each order, there's a couple of extra clicks I have to make in order to print my labels, but it's no big deal. I mean, it's literally easy, and these guys just do a simple, good job at what they do, and I'm very happy. And it costs a lot less than it was costing me before. So that's the update on Shippo. The answer is, yeah, Shippo is a win. That was one of the pieces of information I promised you this week, and I will continue using them. And again, hashtag not sponsored. I'm happy to write my check every month for their services and continue on. Somewhat ironically, in the shipping department, I was just telling the guys on Discord, it had to be 10 minutes after I fulfilled an order to Canada, come back from the post office and, get a notification that, there's a strike in Canada, and Canada Post is on strike and stuff is not moving. I'm like, oh, what a pain. So to my customer, you know who you are, who is in Canada, I apologize, but your stuff is sitting in a warehouse in Jamaica, Queens, New York City, waiting to get on an airplane to pop over the border to you as soon as this thing clears up. So hopefully you guys in Canada will, get this sorted out, and we can get back to normal, whatever normal is. I was threatening to just fill the truck with PFG Stones and just head north, but I don't know. The guys at the border don't have a sense of humor, so we might have a problem with that. So that's the shipping update and the Canada update from the shipping department. It's real brief, but it's good. It's fantastic news. A buddy of mine who's a knife maker was over GLG Knife Works is the company. John, awesome dude. We help each other out whenever we can. And I showed him Shippo, and I showed him how it worked. And we, brought up an order, and we generated shipping labels, and he started up his own account that night, I think, maybe the next morning. And he said, yeah, this is awesome. And he proceeded to plan on not using who he was using, who happened to be the parent company of the company we were just talking about. So again, nothing except a happy customer here of Shippo, but they're working out pretty good. So let's see. Anybody else checking in? Dale checked in. That's cool. Test Room 2003 was the last check-in on YouTube. So the agent started the Mercedes and drove to the General Logan Airport in Boston. This was a normal activity, but it was an important activity because this was a mission in Europe. Arriving at Boston Logan Airport was uneventful, and the agent parked in the central garage. This was normal, and this was good. It did not arouse any suspicion. Proceeding to the gate and getting on the airplane was equally uneventful, but others around the agent did not realize the importance of this mission. For other agents were gathering somewhere in Europe for an important exchange of information. I am not at liberty to discuss exactly what was transpired in this meeting. However, the meeting proceeded apace, and within a couple of days, it was done. The deed was done, and wheels were set in motion that were not easily stopped. It was time for the agent to return to the Boston area. Upon returning to the Logan Airport and entering the vehicle, the agent pushed the button on the very futuristic panel of the Mercedes. The lights lit up, the computers computed, the data was displayed on the screens, and there, encoded, was a message for the agent. The computers in this vehicle have over 100,000 lines of code. They're making measurements on over 75 different sensor systems over 100 times per second. And the message was disturbing. The agent initiated digital communications back to home base to say that there was a problem, looking for advice and instructions. For the problem was encoded in a secret set of words that only home base could understand. The words read on the screen: check engine. An email was received back at home base which said, the battery in your Mercedes is reading low. It requires immediate service. The agent sought advice, and it was recommended to proceed immediately without delay to home base, for fear of stopping the vehicle might be the last time the vehicle ever moved. This is a true story. So my wife comes back from this business trip and gets a check engine light in one of the most sophisticated vehicles on the market. And I'm like, just get home. Just get home. So she gets home, and I go out there with my voltmeter. And I said, look, shut the vehicle down. And tomorrow morning, after everything settles down, I'm going to make a measurement on this battery, and we're going to see what's going on. So that's exactly what happened. And the next morning, I get out there with my voltmeter, and, you know, it's a 12-volt lead acid battery. More on that in a minute. And it measures 11.3 volts. And I walked back in the house and I said, you need a new battery. So it didn't take that many transistors and microprocessors and lines of software to figure out that that thing was not long for this world. So I said, let's figure out what kind of battery it is. So Chandra was, right on the doobly doo, and she's looking up and trying to figure it out. And the next thing I hear, the next thing I hear from the other room is, "What's a fleece battery?" And I'm like, "Excuse me?" It says here on the Mercedes website that it's a fleece battery. I said, well, that's so that they can fleece you with the bill for replacing the battery. No, it turns out that, and my suspicions were verified, that a battery, which we call an absorbed glass mat battery, which I use in my generator, is somehow being called a fleece battery, probably starting in Germany, and probably a victim of translation. And that's what was in the vehicle. So today, the vehicle is over getting a new battery. And we're getting fleeced. So it triggered this whole thing in my head about batteries, and we started talking about batteries. And sure enough, in our world, and when I say our world, I mean the lab, the shop, we're surrounded by batteries. And in particular, being the end of the calendar year, I run around and I check all the stickers on all my CNC machines and make sure that the batteries have been changed. So we're going to talk about all of the machines we have that have all of these batteries, and what, maybe learn a little something about the batteries themselves, and go through this. So if you're on Discord and you're on YouTube chat, I'm going to ask you some questions in a few minutes, and you could just type the answers in. But there are, I'm just going to run through my shop real quick and tell you, the batteries that are inside my shop, and then you're going to tell me the batteries that are inside your shop, and then we're going to talk about what all of these different battery chemistries are. Before I do that, let me give you a little background. So when I started my career as an antenna engineer, and I was designing antennas, at one point I approached a company that ended up hiring me full-time. And that company did work in surveillance electronics for law enforcement and government. And I came in, I was now the antenna expert. I was going to do all the antennas for all the products, which I did, and it was a great time. Had a lot of fun. But somehow I ended up being the battery guy. So we had devices that ran on batteries. You can imagine that some of the stuff we made were covert transmitters. And one of those covert transmitters ran on a AA battery. Now, it had to run on a AA battery because it had to look like something else, which used a AA battery. The problem is that the current requirements of the transmitter were significantly higher than what this device originally was. And your standard AA alkaline battery was not up to the task, and it would not last very long. And that did not meet the mission requirements. Well, right about that time, a little company called Eveready came out with a battery called the L91, and it was this super new technology called lithium. It was a lithium battery. It was targeted at the photo flash market. So if you do any photography and you use strobe lights with AA batteries in them, they work great. And after you fire the flash and they start charging up again, you'd hear the little whine of the high voltage power supply. It would charge back up, and a little light would come on, and your flash was ready to go. Well, if you used alkaline batteries in your flash, you noticed it would take, I don't know, 10 or 15 seconds to charge up. Well, you put these L91 alkaline AA batteries in your photo flash, these newfangled batteries, and it was like 6 seconds and it was charged up. The reason for that is these batteries were happy to deliver high currents. They had a very low internal resistance, and they did a great job at these high currents. So I looked at these batteries and I'm like, these batteries are exactly what we need because we're running higher currents and this is going to be more efficient. So we tried it and it turned out to be a win. One of the weird things that happened was that these new batteries, mechanically, the diameter of the battery was a little fatter than the alkaline AA batteries that were, typically on the market. And it actually caused a problem for us in the application. And we had to do something about that. And I honestly don't remember the exact solution. I think we had a machine, a little bit of plastic. I don't remember, but we had to make this battery fit. I'm here I can report that today, the battery, the L91 battery or its descendants, that problem is gone. So that newfangled technology back then is not so newfangled anymore. It's been around a while, and you don't even think twice about going to the hardware store and picking up batteries that are lithium batteries. In fact, even back then, there were these very special 9-volt batteries, which were lithium batteries, and we'll talk about them also in a minute. And they were super expensive, and they came, one battery came in a foil pouch, and it was kind of crazy. But again, it was a specialized battery for a special application, and the price was no object. So, I've been very sensitive to lithium batteries and their availability and such for quite a while. At one point, I did a study on energy density in easily available batteries. The question was, what's the highest energy density that I can get in an over-the-counter battery? And it turned out that there were 2 batteries that were the top of the list. They were and they're both lithium cells. One was a coin cell called the 2450. That meant it was 24 millimeters in diameter, 5 millimeters thick. The 2450 coin cell, if you look at the picture on the screen, you'll see there's a package of 2032s. Now you know how to decode that number. This was called the 2450. And the energy density of the 2450 was extremely high. Evils in the chat says the 2450 is huge and expensive. Yeah, it's expensive, but it also was the top of the heap for energy density. Okay, and it had a lot of other interesting factors. And I could tell you that we did use that battery, and for the applications, it was pretty nice. And yes, it's expensive. Still available, still off the shelf. The second battery that was fantastic and I think almost as good from an energy density standpoint was called the Type 123 battery. Now, I have a flashlight in my pocket that runs on, Type 123 batteries. This happens to be a Surefire. Type 123 batteries got very popular in flashlights, night vision goggles, illuminated scopes on firearms, and they got everywhere. And if you look at the picture that's currently on the screen, you see that little red battery. Surefire was supplying their own branded Type 123 batteries at an insanely reasonable price for their flashlights, and I bought boxes of them, and I still have boxes of them sitting in my storeroom. So the 123 battery and the 2450 lithium cells were both examples of extremely excellent energy densities. One thing you'll notice, again, we're going to go down the list of chemistries soon. You'll notice that the Type 123 battery is a 3-volt cell, and the 2450 coin cell is a 3-volt cell, and the 2032s and the 2016s and all these other coin cells are 3-volt cells. That's because this lithium chemistry is a 3-volt chemistry. See, the voltage in a single cell is determined by the chemistry of the process. And I don't have the exact chemistry to recite to you, and I don't think you want me to anyway, but that is a 3-volt process. So what about this? Wait a minute, Spence. You just told us about a AA cell called the L91 from Eveready, which, by the way, is also pictured in this photo. It's the fourth from the right. That is a 1.5-volt battery, but it's lithium. But didn't you just say that lithium is a 3-volt chemistry? So when the L91 battery came out, it was a miracle of chemistry. Eveready, there's patents and there's all sorts of stuff, but they work really hard to come up with a lithium battery that delivered 1.5 volts. This was non-trivial. This was like really important. And Eveready nailed it. How many years ago is this? This is over 20 years ago. This is close to 30 years ago with the L91 battery. So next time you go into that Home Depot and you see these racks of lithium AA batteries and now there's lithium AAA batteries, just give a little pause and think that was a very difficult chemistry problem that Eveready solved. So we've got lithium batteries. We've got 3-volt lithium batteries. We've got 1.5-volt lithium batteries. We've got alkaline batteries, which we're all familiar with, right? The cheap AA batteries, D cells, C cells, are all alkalines. They're all 1.5 volts. So just jumping around a little bit, the 9-volt battery the 9-volt battery in alkaline consisted of 6 1.5-volt cells stacked up in that 9-volt battery. So 9-volt batteries always sucked for energy density because they were so busy fitting in these 6 little cells that you couldn't get very efficient. Now there's these lithium 9-volt batteries, and if you're guessing that they're 3-volt cells, you are correct. And they could be more efficient, they could be lithium, and they're wonderful. I have the 9-volt lithium batteries in my surveying metal detector. Long story, not important. Evil says correctly, 1.5-volt AA size lithium primary cells are great for things like memory backup in my oscilloscope. They last forever and are less prone to leak. Correct. So we're hitting on a lot of the different features of these batteries, and let's just go through our shops, okay? In the chat, you could Evil's just told us memory backup in the oscilloscope. Let's list the use of batteries. Now, there's two kinds of batteries. There's primary cells, also called non-rechargeable batteries, and there's rechargeable batteries. So let's go through these a little bit and see what we have. So starting in my shop, I have my thermostats all have lithium rechargeable cells in them. Okay, they are continually trickle charged inside those. They generally don't need any maintenance. I go over to my vertical machining center, which has a Fanuc control on it. I recently did a video which was happiness is a Fanuc control with a Haas battery board, in which I used to buy these $30 lithium primary cells in a little plastic special custom plastic case that snapped into the Fanuc control, and I just got tired of it. I kept buying these special batteries, and when you rip them open, you find out there's a little small lithium cell. And if you look in our picture, there's a little tiny battery called the CR. I think it's called CR2, and it was basically that cell inside the Fanuc plastic for lots of money. So I went ahead and replaced it with what Haas sells, which is a battery board. I'll tell you the story right now about that battery board. So a number of years ago, I was on the Practical Machinist forum. Okay, I haven't been on the forum in a long time, but I was talking about the fact that the battery backups for CNC controls were getting out of hand, and I wanted to design a board that had two AA cells on it, or two type 123 cells on it, which is I think what I started with, and diode combine them so they'd back each other up, less a diode drop, and then have that feed the machine so that you could change out these cells with easily available batteries. And I said, if there's enough interest in this, I will make these boards, because I was heading in that direction. Yeah, Mr. Micro Machinists, also known as Adam Demuth, says, don't forget Fanuc's expensive shipping for the expensive batteries. You are correct, sir. And I could tell you have felt the pain. So in the video I show, so literally 2 months after I've made these comments, Haas came out with this battery board that was exactly what I described. So either great minds were thinking alike. Well, I shouldn't say great minds, but adequate minds were thinking alike, or that somebody at Haas heard me and said, that's a good idea. So now Haas has this battery board, which I linked to in the description of that video. And I went ahead and I took the leads and the plug out of that fancy Fanuc battery, and I did a little cable, and that's what's in my Fanuc control. It wanted a 3-volt battery. It got a 3-volt battery, less a diode drop, and it's very happy. So I am done with the fancy custom Fanuc batteries. So Adam, save your old batteries. And I probably have a few more that I could probably do this little trick with if you need it. So you let me know. So now the Vertical Machining Center is running off of a pair of type 123 batteries. We go around the shop, we hit the Haas TL1. When the TL1 came out, so mine is a 2009 Haas TL1. They had a lithium cell with solder tabs on it, soldered onto the motherboard of the computer in the TL1. This was stupid. Sorry, Haas, I love you, but that was like a horrible design decision. So when they came out with the battery backup board, they said, well, we'll send a tech out and we're going to remove the thing. So you had to remove the battery while the machine was powered up. You had to be pretty good at what you were doing with the soldering iron to do this, and then run the wires to the little board. And now the board would take over for this board that was for the battery that was soldered onto the motherboard. I am sure that is in the rearview mirror right now as far as Haas is concerned, but for my then brand new 2009, it was a pain in the neck. So that's now running off of a Haas board with the two cells. Oh, and Haas, there's a lot of lessons here, folks, so stay with me. Haas came out with that board, And the batteries they specified were called 2/3 AA, 2/3 AA. And it means 2/3 of a AA battery. So that battery is not easy to find. Whereas you can't help but trip over type 123 batteries. So one day I sat down, I put my electrical engineering hat on, and I looked at these two batteries, and they were physically, essentially identical. And they were electrically, essentially identical. So what's the difference between a 2/3 AA and a type 123? Answer, couldn't find any. Probably a datasheet thing, probably a specification buried somewhere. So out those batteries went, in went the type 123s. Life is good. Let's see. I wanted to catch up here. So Evil says, I'm going around my shop. I just got to the lathe. Evil says, dial calipers. Yes, the LR44 or SR44 or type 357. By the way, be aware of what chemistry you're buying when you get those batteries. There are alkalines that size, and I recommend you use the silver oxide. We'll talk about the chemistries in a minute. A flashlight running an 18650. Where's my, it's over yonder. So 18650s, if you look at the picture on the screen on the far left, that's a rechargeable lithium cell. 18650 means, I believe I have this right, 18 millimeter diameter, 65 millimeters long, cylindrical cell. And oh, by the way, that rechargeable lithium battery led to the batteries that Tesla used in the first electric cars that they made. It was a slightly bigger cell, I think, but it was basically that cell. And now derivatives of that cell are what's used in a lot of electric vehicles, including mine. Let's see. Rammel says the Renishaw probe LS14250. I have seen those cells. I have not held them in my hands, but I'm not sure which one it is. My Adam says, one place I worked had the power go out as the maintenance guy was swapping the drive batteries in a Fanuc-powered mill. Amazing timing. I'm so sorry. Dude, that's not good. That's why I like the circuit board with the two cells. You could take out one old cell, put in a new cell, take out the second old cell, put in the new cell, and not have that risk, hopefully, and do it annually. Maybe mention not measuring batteries with conductive metal calipers. So your Evils is exactly correct. When I was doing my investigation into the Type 123 battery versus the 2/3 AA battery, I remember putting Kapton tape on my calipers so that I could make the measurements. Yeah, do not use the metal calipers. Warren Jones says, it seems to me my old Canon AE1 ran on a 123 battery. That's pretty cool. Most of them use coin cells. Warren also says, in my shop we have N-Loop AA rechargeable, regular AA, and Milwaukee M18 and M12. My machines are all old, as I am, and don't need batteries. Dude, I think we all need batteries. So you bring up something very interesting. So if you look in the picture on the far left, second from the left, is a Tenergy rechargeable AA, and that is nickel metal hydride. Eneloop is another company that used to be called something else. I can't remember, but anyway, those are nickel metal hydride batteries, a different chemistry, not lithium. What else? And then you also brought up something very interesting. You brought up the Milwaukee battery. So Milwaukee, DeWalt, Ryobi. We all have these magnificent batteries we're putting on our rechargeable hand tools. Those batteries are lithium batteries, and the important thing about those is that the control circuitry for recharging those lithium cells is very important. If I recall correctly, I think some of the companies have the control circuitry for charging the batteries in the battery, and some of them have it in the charger. I don't remember which is which, but make no mistake about it, recharging those batteries requires very careful control. So if you ever have one of these batteries bare and you say, oh, I'm just going to charge it off my power supply, you are in serious trouble. Okay. The charging electronics that are used with the lithium cells are very important. I'm not going to dive into the details. Mr. Doug Chin, welcome aboard, sir. He says Eneloop was Sanyo, then Panasonic. Thank you. I'm glad you're here. Yes, that's it. So they were, when I last looked at them, they were Panasonic, and then all of a sudden they were Eneloop. But that's fine. Let's see. Evil says Memorex C9000 charger for nickel metal hydride, and some old X-Star for the okay, so you have a couple of chargers for 18650s. Tuck says his 1996 Fidal machining center uses a solder-in 3.6 volt purple battery. I know. So that battery can be replaced with the Haas board, Tuck. And we could talk about that. Maybe we can get you all switched over. Evil says all tool batteries are 18650s, which is that blue battery on the left of the picture, with plastic keying and a battery management board. So yeah, that's what I was saying, is that there are some of those packs, and I don't remember which ones, that don't have the battery management board in the pack. It's in the charger. I don't like that, but that's the way it is. Tuck says Tadrian TL2100 Fidal CPU battery, 3.6 volts for Fidal. Okay. Yeah, Tadrian is I believe, an Israeli company that makes some very interesting batteries. I've used them over the years. I have some in the cabinet right now for other purposes. They make some lithium batteries that are like D-cell sized, that have tons of energy in them. They're really fantastic. So continuing around my shop, we leave the lathe and we get over to the grinder. So the grinder, of course, I bought that brand new 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. That's a Fanuc control, Fanuc, cabinet. However, it has a battery pack accessible from the outside. You take 2 screws, you take this nicely gasketed cover off, and if you follow me on Instagram, you've seen this. It's 4 D-cells, regular alkaline D-cells, good old flashlight batteries. And it's awesome because they're cheap, they're available. You don't have to open the machine. You power the machine up. This is the usual procedure, by the way, for a lot of these things. You power the machine up. While the power's up, you open the lid, you pop out the old batteries, you pop in the new batteries. It's a sub $10 change, and you're good for the next year. And frankly, it'd be very interesting to measure the capacity of the batteries I took out, which I didn't do, because I think they probably have tons of life left in them. But again, easy to access, easy to change. Let's see if I can think of other things. Of course, we have calipers, and somebody already brought up for example, Mitutoyo calipers that use either an LR44 or a Type 357. So be warned, in those coin cells, there are alkaline coin cells that have generally been made for toys and such. Okay, they are terrible. Okay, so if you're getting a coin cell for your instrument, do your best to get a silver oxide Type 357, LR44. I don't, there's a bunch of equivalent numbers. Get the silver oxide version. It's not going to leak. It's going to last longer. It's a better battery. And the alkalines that are physically the same are horrible. So there are probably a bunch of other batteries that I'm missing. Oh, while we're on the topic of batteries, I recently bought a new camera. I bought a new Nikon Z9, and for the first time, they've always had rechargeable cells, and you had to have their special charger, which it comes with. But now it has a USB-C port, and I could plug a USB-C power source charger to the camera, and it'll charge it. And I'm thrilled. So that if that's an option that's available, do it. So let's talk a little bit about the different chemistries that are in batteries, because I think it's instructive. First of all, the battery family tree is broken into two major branches: rechargeable batteries and primary cells. So primary cells are not rechargeable. They're chemically loaded with energy. Chemistry turns it into electrical energy. You use it, and out it goes. When you use it up, you throw it away. Let's see. The rechargeable cells are able to okay. Evils has triggered another story. Which branch is a mercury standard cell in? So he's making a joke, but back in the day when I was a kid, I was building Heath kits with my dad. And one of the things we built was a vacuum tube voltmeter. It's a beautiful voltmeter. I actually have it in the basement. And when you built this vacuum tube voltmeter, of course, you had to calibrate it. The instructions for calibrating it were to go buy a brand new battery. This was a carbon zinc battery, also known as a dry cell. Okay. Don't use it for anything else. And then you'd bring it, you'd fire up your vacuum tube voltmeter, probably let it warm up or something, and then measure the voltage of this battery. And then if you looked really carefully on the face of the meter, which had many scales, on the voltage scale, right above 1.5, there was a little red dot. And it was 1.55 volts. And you would calibrate the meter to the open circuit voltage of this D cell. That was a dry cell. That was a carbon zinc battery. The voltage, the open circuit voltage of that cell was good enough to serve as a reference. And that's how you calibrated your meter. So we'll go through the chemistries, but just know that different chemistries have different voltage behavior with respect to the temperature and the chemistry and the charge. And that was an example of a chemistry that, again, open circuit, meaning you're not drawing any current out of it. You're just measuring the voltage at essentially zero current. Had a very stable, reliable, predictable voltage. And that's how you calibrated the voltmeter that you were putting together from Heathkit. Okay, so let's take it from the top. And I do have some data here that we could refer to in case we need some actual facts. So I'm just going to run down this list here. We're going to start with primary cells. These are non-rechargeable cells. And some of the ones that we're familiar with. Alkaline batteries, okay? That's the run-of-the-mill battery that you can go down and buy at the drugstore or Home Depot. I'm going to read the important ones, and then we're going to read some of the unimportant ones because they're fun. The dry cell battery, which I call a carbon zinc battery. Again, that came before alkaline. So when alkaline batteries were an improvement, this is the battery they were improving over. A so-called mercury battery. So mercury batteries were very good batteries, except for the mercury. So they stopped making them. So they're kind of hard to get. In fact, I don't remember the voltages, but I do remember that I had a light meter. I had a photographic light meter that ran on a mercury battery, and you couldn't get the mercury battery anymore. So one of my early machining projects was a little adapter that held 2 coin cells that were almost exactly the right voltage. Yeah, so yeah, 1.35 volts. Yeah, so I don't remember the details of this. Maybe it was a single coin cell, but the mercury battery was big, the coin cell was small. I remember making a brass adapter. And there was actually some interest in that, but I kind of lost interest in making them. But that it got me out of the woods. But you couldn't buy mercury batteries anymore. Silver oxide battery, we talked about those. Yeah, I know you were referring to the Weston standard cell, but it's important to point out in the history of electrical engineering, voltage standards were these chemical standards, because the voltage you measured on the cell was a function of the physics, which is to say the chemistry of the materials. So it was a good standard. So let's review some of the other chemistries that were around. Some of these I don't even recognize. An aluminum air battery, no idea. A Bunsen cell, a chromic acid cell, a Clark cell, a Daniell cell. By the way, this is all Wikipedia. Jumping around, a lemon potato battery. I know some of you are going to look this up and you're going to start building some lemon potato batteries. A molten salt battery. Interesting. A nickel oxyhydroxide battery. There's a zillion of them here. Let's see. You know you could make a battery out of pennies and nickels and lemon juice and paper towels, of course. Here's a battery that, how many people here either use a hearing aid or know somebody that uses a hearing aid? Can I see a show of hands? Okay. What kind of batteries do hearing aids frequently use? Almost always, unless they're rechargeable. Josh, what kind of air? Correct. So that's it. It's a zinc air battery. Here's what's super cool about zinc air batteries. First of all, you go to the drugstore, number 13. Outstanding. You go to the drugstore and you buy them. They're not terribly expensive, and you peel off a little piece of tape on the zinc air battery. It exposes a couple of holes in the metal. This lets in, say it with me, air, okay, which starts the reaction. Oxygen being the reactant, okay. So the fact that the source of the battery's electrolyte, half of it's coming from the air, means that battery is doing more work in the volume it has than a typical battery in other chemistries, because it's using air as part of the electrolyte. Is that not crazy? So zinc air batteries are very high efficiency, spatial efficiency, or volumetric efficiency. There's a picture. Thank you very much. Can you see you can see the little sticky thing on it. Okay? The little red peel-off thing. So zinc air batteries are cool. Now, the problem with zinc air batteries, and you probably also know this, is that if you activate a zinc air battery, it's going. Its reaction is going, and if you don't use the electric it makes, it's not going to last very long, and it's going to die all on its own. Yeah, that is not a handling tab. That is actually blocking the hole. Let's see. Can you see a hole in that, Josh? Can you take a picture of that? Okay, so we've run through a bunch of the primary cells that we bump into. And let's talk about some of the, and of course, you could figure out that my favorite is the lithiums as a primary cell, and specifically the Type 123 battery. Yep, there it is. If you're looking, if you're watching the video, Josh posted a picture, and you can see 4 little teeny holes, and those 4 little teeny holes are covered up by the tape. And when you pull the tape off, it activates it through those 4 little teeny holes. Pretty neato. Secondary cells, rechargeable batteries. Of course, we have, just running down this, the things we've heard of, the lead acid battery. So the lead acid battery is the battery that's in most vehicles. So it's been around forever. The lead acid battery uses plates of lead and, wait for it, acid, and it gets charged up, and then it can provide its energy. In the old phone systems, what we used to call the POTS, the plain old telephone system, they use these big 2-volt. That was one cell of a lead acid battery is 2 volts. So in your car battery, you have 6 cells to make 12 volts. So lead acid batteries were very robust. Okay. In the phone company, they were maintained by measuring the specific gravity of the acid. You could directly measure the charge of the battery, which, by the way, for all the batteries we've talked about, you cannot do. You cannot walk up to a battery that you use typically and make a voltage measurement or anything and know what the charge of that battery is. When you push the little button on your DeWalt battery pack and it puts 2 lights out of 3 lights, and you're saying, oh, it's 2/3 full, it's best guess, but it is not directly measuring the charge of the battery. Whereas in the old days with lead acid batteries, you measure the specific gravity of the acid, and that was it, man. You measured the charge of the battery. So that ended up in our cars. The earliest electric vehicles use them also, which brings us to present day. In fact, right now, a battery is going into Chandra's car, and they're calling it a fleece battery, which we call an absorbed glass matte battery. This is the evolution of the lead acid battery, where the acidic electrolyte is absorbed into a fabric, basically, which improves the mechanical behavior of the battery. Oh, yes. Oh, here we go. Yes, thank you, Josh. There is a persistent wives' tale, which you can't put a lead acid battery on concrete or it will die. So if you have a battery, he pulled the pin and ran. Yeah. When you have a battery and it's in a electrically insulated container, okay, which of course it has to be, how could it know what it's put down on? And the answer is it cannot. So there may be temperature reasons for not putting your battery, cooling off your battery so much. Remember, it's a chemical reaction, which means as the temperature goes down, the chemical activity goes down. If the chemical activity goes down, you got problems. So maybe you're cooling off the battery. Maybe that's where it came from. Adam says, my knees know when I'm standing on concrete all day versus a wood floor. Yeah, that's because of the scalar fields and the reflected 6G rays, Adam. That's not because of the concrete. I'm just saying. And Josh says if it leaks, that's not good for a floor. Yeah, it is complete nonsense. But again, hopefully you're not having to deal with moving lead acid batteries around. So in under lead acid batteries, there are deep cycle batteries, flooded batteries, AGM batteries, which we talked about, gel batteries. So there's a bunch of flavors, but if in the end it's a lead plate and it's acid, it's a lead acid battery. 2 volts per cell, more or less, and you go from there. Then we got lithium ion batteries. Now, we are awash in lithium ion batteries. Yeah, okay. So this is good. Evil says a nice feature of lead acid is that you can drain it to 0 volts, which can be explosive when done with lithium. So this is another reason I say that you must have a control circuit associated with a lithium battery. This is going to protect the battery, and prevent forest fires. So be careful when you're messing with batteries. Some of the batteries, the actual cylindrical batteries, have protection circuits in them. Some of them do not. Adam says, one of my last projects before going self-employed was a lithium ion startup that went belly up. Sorry. But there's a lot of activity in lithium ion. Here's a list of lithium ion chemistries. We're just going to run through it. Lithium ion, lithium cobalt oxide battery, lithium silicon battery, lithium ion manganese iron phosphate battery, which is common, lithium ion manganese oxide battery, LMO, lithium ion polymer battery, LiPo, you've heard about that one, lithium iron phosphate battery, lithium nickel manganese cobalt oxide battery, lithium nickel cobalt aluminum oxides, lithium sulfur battery, lithium titanate battery, thin film lithium ion battery, lithium ceramic battery. Why? Here's a quiz for you guys. Why is all of this interest in lithium batteries? Adam says that the lithium ion startup that went belly up spent over $300 million and created nothing. Evil says because consumers want their phones to last. So the Earth's crust has a huge amount of lithium. It's easy to get. It's not hard to get lithium. Lithium is there. Okay? So it's very easy to get it. Making it so that it doesn't blow up when you charge it. It doesn't blow up when you use it. It's cost-effective, energy-dense, all of these things. This is all the tweaks being done to the lithium process, and it's of great interest. Storing energy these days from your solar, from your, we were talking yesterday about wind, wind power. All of this is lithium batteries, so there's a lot of work being done there. Nickel cadmium batteries. Okay, that was a rechargeable battery, and when I was a kid, that was the pinnacle of rechargeable battery technology. Was lithium ion, nickel cadmium batteries, also known as NiCads. So, Evil says lithium is the lightest element that doesn't evaporate into space. Excellent point. Nickel cadmium batteries were very important in aviation, very important in everything because they were the rechargeable batteries. I had a Makita drill driver that ran on nickel cadmium batteries. I had one. My dad had 2 of them, one down in New Jersey, one up in Canada. Those nickel cadmium batteries died. Okay, they didn't last long. They developed memory. So if you used them a little bit and then charged them, and used them a little bit and charged them, the next time you went to use them, when they hit a little bit, they would die. So then there were processes that you had to go through to resurrect these NiCad batteries, and they were expensive. So is it the most reliable chemistry? I will take the fifth on that one. It's a terrible battery. If you charge up a nickel cadmium battery and you put it on the shelf, you experience what we call self-discharge. NiCads were rechargeable. That's good. And they had a very high self-discharge rate. That's bad. Nickel cadmiums were supplanted by nickel metal hydride batteries. No memory. The whole memory problem went away with nickel metal hydride batteries. I think they were more efficient. Huge improvement over NiCads. But when lithiums came out, the lithium rechargeables, especially the ones that are in my yellow power tools downstairs, the self-discharge rate of our modern lithium rechargeable batteries it's got to be 100 to 1,000 times lower than the NiCads were, and better than the nickel metal hydrides are. I still have some nickel metal hydride batteries in play. In the lab, I have some in like power screwdrivers, but I don't have any nickel cadmium batteries left. And nickel cadmium batteries leaked. Let's talk for a second about leakage. Okay? You go to the hardware store today, you're faced with two major brands of alkaline batteries. What are they? Duracell, Energizer. Which ones do you buy? I'll give you a moment to think about that. I'll take a sip of tea. Anybody? Bueller? Evil says it doesn't matter. They're equally bad. Incorrect. Anybody else? You in the back? You in the back eating the ham sandwich? L91s don't leak. Correct. That's because they're lithiums, dude. We're talking alkaline batteries. Duracell, Energizer. What do you buy? Doug is, I know what Doug knows, and he will throw a shoe at me if I tell you a lie. Don't worry. Okay, here's the answer. 25 years ago, that answer was undeniably clear. Duracells were the best batteries, period, full stop. Energizers were junk compared to Duracells 25 years ago. I'm sorry, Duracell. I was an adherent. I was completely faithful, but you're leaking all over the place today. Duracells are leakers. And Energizers, battery for battery, the Energizers are not leaking. Okay? They're capable of leaking, but statistically, if you give me some AA batteries that are Duracell and some AA batteries that are Energizers, I guarantee you those Duracell AAs are easily 10 times more likely, maybe more, to leak. So that's the report, for alkaline batteries, Energizer, yes. Okay. Lithium batteries, I'm perfectly happy with the Energizer lithium batteries. And as Doug points out, the good old L91s, baby, they are fantastic batteries. And they're an excellent choice. If you have a leaker, if you have an alkaline battery that leaks, get yourself some citric acid. I use a saturated aqueous solution of citric acid and some swabs, and you just soak the swabs, lay the swabs on top of the ugly, white, horrible, leaky stuff, and it will bubble, and it will clean it up, and you'll clean up that leakage. It's a pain in the neck, but it will clean up. Finally, I will leave you with this. I know we're at the top of the hour here, so I want to wrap it up. Lead acid batteries. Here's the rule. This is Webb's law of lead acid batteries, in particular car batteries, but really any lead acids, including gel cells, one of which is pictured in the picture on the screen. which is used in, I have 13 UPSs, okay, uninterruptible power supplies. They all have lead acid batteries. Here's the rule: 3 years and out. So the failure of the Mercedes battery this week was over the 3-year line because we didn't do 3 years and out. Okay? 3 years and out. My buddy Steve calls me from Maine. Do you have a charger? Yes, I do. Can I borrow it? Yes, you can. Why? The battery in his truck died and he has to get it over to the mechanic and he's got to get it started. How old's the battery, Steve? I think it was 7 years, like 3 years and out. Lead acid car batteries will avalanche fail. Okay, so you'll drive them, you'll start them up, drive to work, park the car, come out, and it is dead. It went from seems perfectly normal to absolutely toast. So lead acid batteries, especially car batteries, 3 years and out. Let's see. I think I've covered everything. I'll leave you with one story. I remember getting in trouble with my dad once because I was supposed to be doing my homework, which tells you, I was probably, 10 years old, maybe 11 years old. I was supposed to be doing my homework, but instead I was cutting open dry cells, D cells, which of course are carbon batteries, because the center of the battery was a carbon rod. And if you cut the battery open, you could pull the carbon rod out, and now you could do some cool things with the carbon rod. So my interest in batteries goes back that far. And I hope I gave you a taste of what the different chemistries are, why they are, and what choices you should make when you have an opportunity to make those choices. If you have any battery stories or questions or whatever, just pop over to Discord and I'm happy to answer them. We'll be over in the after party roundtable for a chat. In the meantime, if you need a PFG stone to get flat and stay flat, head on over to pfgstones.com. If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe on YouTube Live. You could also subscribe to the audio version of this podcast on your favorite podcatcher. And with that, I want to wish you the best of days, and you should get flat, stay flat, and we'll see you next week. Take care.